about 3D. I wanted to start out first by doing a little preview about what I have done. I've worked on many, many projects. One of the ones that I'm most proud of is Micro Monsters for Sir David Attenborough, which was the premier 8K resolution video series that was done when they introduced the Quest 2. Oh, let's get off the headsets. So we have when we get everything done with the presentation, we're going to let everybody see on the headsets, and we have different ones. And the reason why I've given you these anaglyph glasses, the red and cyan, is because that's really what this is all about. That's where it started out. Well, would you get the others out there? And where's your part? After this. One of the other things I've been very lucky to be able to do is to work with Bill Gates. And I have a little blurb here from Ian Saunders, who is the creative director for Bill Gates, for Gates Notes. Bill Gates is very, very involved in doing 3D. Well, actually 360, but not 3D. He started out just doing 360, and if you go to gatesnotes.com, you will see a lot of 360 work that I did with him. I did about 12 different videos with him. And we have a variety of headsets we're going to be showing you. And then I've taught at Mahidol University. I taught 3D there. I'm a tech journalist. I've traveled all over the world doing 3D and VR. And my home has been Thailand for the last 20 years. And a little bit about my son, who, even though he's young, he has quite a bit of experience. He started out at 7 years old being part of the Little Monk TV series. And he also has been working with me, and actually my wife and my daughter and my other son have also all worked with me. And William was fortunate enough, we only were able to put 2 credits on Micro Monsters. So I have one and he has the other one. So he is a professional in the business. Now, this is all about immersive storytelling. And immersive storytelling is both VR180, which is 3D, and 360. Now, VR180 was kind of born from the very early days. 3D goes back a very long time. If I asked you when you thought 3D started, you probably would not think it went back to 1838. But yet that's when it was. And the stereoscope was a very simple way, and actually it's still the same system that we use today to view 3D. You want to? About? Yes? So for instance, you see Abraham Lincoln. Those were taken in 1838, and you use the stereoscope, and it is in 3D. And that's exactly what a headset is. It's nothing more than an electronic stereoscope. It puts the images up side by side, slightly different perspective, just the way that our eyes see things. And in 1890s, British film pioneer William Fries Green created 3D for film. So all of these things have been around for a very long time. This is not new technology, it's just improved technology. Now we have 2-lens cameras. For instance, the Views XR, which you see right here on the table, that is both a 360, which is recording right now in 360, but when you press a button, it flips open and becomes a 3D VR180. So it's one of the few high systems. Then we have this has been, I'll just put this here for now. Up until now, this has been one of the best professional systems. This is the Zcam K1 Pro. And what it has is it's actually got two recorders, and it records to two SD cards, one for the right and one for the left. And one of the situations that you can run into sometimes is that you have f-stops. So you have to make sure that the f-stops are the same. Otherwise, you're going to wind up with two different images that are slightly different, and that doesn't work. Because, you know, our brains are very smart. They see these differences and doesn't work. Okay? So this is, up until now, this has been my workhorse for doing 3D VR180. Now, we have the Canon, which has been an amazing tool. I am so in love with this camera. I didn't want to bring it back today. So, now, if you would, put on your anaglyph glasses. And I'm going to teach you a little bit about the basics of 3D. Yes, we have plenty. We have some extra we will leave with you also. Now this was actually shot, I was very fortunate, I worked with Panasonic in the development of their 3D camera. And so this was the first underwater 3D that was shot here in Thailand. And as you can see, there are areas that come off the screen and areas that go back.
Yes.
So you have layers.
Yes.
And that's really what 3D is all about. If you shoot everybody standing in a line, it's not going to look so good. But if you move people and make them stagger a little bit, then you have layers. And that's what you want to create good 3D. So you understand, if the red goes to the right and the cyan goes to the left, then you're going to have it come forward. But if the cyan goes right and the left goes red, then it goes back into the screen more and more depth. Okay? So again, if we look at this, you now can see that if you look at the words, they're coming off the screen. And if you look at his back here at the, let me point it out here on the screen, it'll be easier. If you look here, you see the cyan is going this way and the red is going the other way. So it's pushed further back in the screen. So that's how the basics of this system work. And so here is a little bit about the interaxial, which is what we call the distance between the two lenses. Now, something that's interesting that Canon decided to do, this camera uses 64 millimeters, which is about the same distance as between our eyes. So it's trying to mimic how our eyes see things. But what Canon decided to do was to create this at about 60 millimeters. What that means is that we're able to get closer to things. Because one of the interesting things about 3D is that if you look out the window today and you look at a building in the distance, it doesn't look 3D. Your mind knows that it is. It knows it's not flat. But that's how we can get fooled when we're watching movies. And they used to have these backdrops that are painted. And because people automatically assume that it's real if it looks good enough, then they accept that it's 3D, but yet they cannot see that it's 3D. So the idea is that with 3D, if you're going to do a landscape shot, it's not going to work so well if things are too far away, because it's not going to look very 3D. But if you do a landscape shot and you have someone standing close and then something else a little further back, you want layers. You want close, you want medium, and you also want distance. When you put those three elements together, then you get good 3D. So as you can see, another thing that that changes how your perspective is how far apart the interaxial distance is. So in the earlier days of 3D, we used to separate the cameras to change the distance. So if we put the lenses further apart, we could create better 3D in the distance. If we wanted to do a close-up with an actor, we needed to keep those lenses very close together. In fact, there was also something that we used quite often for professional jobs, excuse me, and that was what we called a beam splitter. So it was a device that you had a camera facing forward, and you had another camera facing down. And you used a 50-50 teleprompter type mirror. So you shot through one and shot the reflection in the other. And with that, excuse me, I need to get some water. Having a mask on dries you out faster. Thank you. So we don't get to do that now with the current slate of 3D VR180 cameras because the lenses are spherical. They're full fisheye. And so moving them apart is going to create more problems than what it would solve. So this shows you how occlusion, if things are in a straight line, then it's going to look different depending upon how far apart the lenses are.
Well, sorry.
Sure.
This interaction then between the lens to lens, right?
Right.
But that's when the fixed cannot adjust.
Cannot adjust. You can adjust a little bit in post,
Okay.
but not too much.
Yes, and then I want to ask there's one the Canon design this distance of the lens. This one in the standard or the best the distance already, right?
Well, like I said, 64 millimeters has been the accepted norm.
Oh, okay.
Because that's the same as our eyes.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
So, of course, everybody is different. So, a young child, their eyes are not 64 millimeters apart. So it looks different to them. But their eyes are also very flexible.
Oh.
So they're able to see 3D actually much easier than a lot of older people.
Okay.
And the older you get, there are a lot of times, there are people, it's very interesting. When VR came out, people would put on the headset and say, oh, it doesn't look right, I'm getting a headache. And a lot of times what it was down to was the cause was they had undiagnosed eye problems. And unfortunately, most people live, and it's a little bit of a joke, I'll see if you get what I'm saying here. They live on a river in Egypt. Denial. So in other words, they don't want to accept, most people don't like to accept that they have a problem. I had a friend who was a TV reviewer. He reviewed the TVs themselves. And when 3D TVs came out, he would put on the glasses and he would instantly get sick because his eyes had a problem. He actually had to go to an optometrist and get special glasses made so that he could look at 3D. And we still do have that problem sometimes with some people with VR headsets. And this is kind of something that we're trying to find a way to deal with. And actually, with the Quest, actually there's the Quest 2 in there in the did we bring the gray one up? Or did we forget one?
Yeah.
The gray one's not here.
Let me go.
Yeah, can you check down in the car? I thought we took it, but maybe it got missed. It's all right, we have enough here. Okay, there you go. Okay, so our eyes also are used to doing convergence. We do not do divergence. So if the separation is too great, it will hurt. And this is where people will get sick very easily. Because if you get too close, with this camera, if you get too close, that separation is going to be too wide when you're looking at it in the headset. Because you're closer to it. As you move back, that separation, it goes down. But you also lose some of the stereo. So it's a matter of making adjustments with the camera. With the beam splitter, we would move the cameras. With this, we treat this the same way we would treat prime lenses. We can't zoom, although they have prime zooms now, but with typical prime lenses, you would move the camera forward or backward. That's what you do with this. but you also have to keep in mind creating good 3D effects. So that makes a huge difference. And we have certain accommodations. Our eyes, like I said, can go out, they can't go diverge. So that's what we have to try and avoid, is too much divergence. And then we have something that we call screen parallax. You think of these two lenses as sending out a signal that crosses at some point. Where those two images meet, the axis point of the center of the X, that is screen parallax, or 0. So then you have, if you were looking at it with the anaglyph glasses, that would be the point where the two colors are right on top of each other, and no difference. And that's just at the screen plane. So that's, again, where we want to learn how to adjust. Maybe it's a matter of moving the balls closer. Maybe it's a matter of changing the perspective. Now, there's one other thing about VR180. Because the curvature of the lens, the spherical nature of the lens, the best 3D is in the center.
You mean the zero parallax on the skin, right?
Yes. In other words, at the center, this is where the best 3D is. If you go over here, or if you go over here, it's not as good. And that goes even as you move further away.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And when we look at things in the headsets, you'll see how that looks. And you can look to the side and you can see. Because VR180 is this. And most people, you see that, but you don't really look that way. So it takes you to turn before you're going to go ahead and see those areas. In fact, that's one of the reasons why Google came up with VR180. They saw what Facebook was doing with 360, and they did research, and they did eye tracking. And they let people watch videos. And they saw that when they looked at the 3D 360 videos, they mostly looked straight ahead. They maybe looked around a little bit, but mostly you look straight ahead, because that's how we're trained. We look at the TV, it's right in front of us. We don't expect to look around. So this is a kind of a change of how we are used to seeing things. So they decided they wanted to have something that was special to them, and so they came up with 3D VR180. So when we talk about creating an image and creating a scene, then we talk about the depth budget. And that's the amount of space that you have to work with. So for instance, if we're shooting in this room, our depth budget is...
ขออภัยนะครับผมเขียนผิดนิดนึงตรงการจัดการความลึกครับไม่ใช่จัดการ
Okay. Okay.
point out my typo.
Okay. He did a good job, I think. So our depth budget in this room is somewhat limited. We have a short amount of area. So when we're designing our shot, we take that into consideration. We also have to take into consideration where is going to be the best place to put the camera. When you have something outside, of course, your depth budget is much bigger, and you have to plan accordingly. So these are some of the terms that we use when we're putting this together. One of the things that we have to make sure of is we need to try and stay away from vertical misalignment and rotational error. And these are things that can cause problem when you're looking at it. VR180 3D, the camera has to be level. This camera, I actually have to put a small level on top of it to make sure. This one, it's wonderful. It's built in. So you can make sure, that's why even though when I'm using the Ronin, I can make sure that my is staying level. My image is staying level, and I don't have those errors. Because when you tilt it this way, that's how it's going to look when you're looking at it in the headset, and your eyes are going to go, wait, what is that? So you cannot pan. You can dolly in and out. And in fact, I have a slide that talks about that. We'll get to that in just a second. So you want to stay away from rotational errors. You want to make sure that everything stays level. You want to make sure that your vertical is correct and you're not juddering around too much. That's why the two best ways to go is either with a tripod or with a steady gimbal. Because you want to make sure, first of all, you notice this is extended out. The reason for that is if I bring it back any further than this, I'm going to see the feet.
Sorry.
This mom, just see, maybe I forgot to take the gray case. Maybe it's still in the office. So many headsets. So I came up with this, and I balanced it off by putting a very strong and somewhat heavy external power, which actually does a great job of keeping the battery totally full. And I've got the Atomos Ninja, the 5 Plus, which will do 8K RAW, ProRes RAW with this camera, which is fantastic. Same thing for the gimbal. If you hold it too close to yourself, it's not going to work because you're going to see your feet. And that's pretty distracting. Okay. So we want to avoid those kind of errors when we're shooting. And we have to watch out for ghosting, which can cause problems. So, do's and don'ts. So your tilt, you can move slowly. Your pan, not so good. If you go really, really slow, you might be able to get away with it. But if you have, for instance, if you have someone in motion and they're moving and you're tracking them, as long as you go slow, that can work for you. If you're standing, if you try and jerk and do a snap, will not work. The 3D doesn't follow. Dolly, slowly. Pedestal, slowly. Roll, not at all. That's where we get into the errors. Okay, so that's all that I've got for you about shooting, because that's a lot to take in, and it's a lot of practice. Actually, I originally had 5. I'm not sure if I've got the Quest 2, but what I've got here is I've got the Pico G2, which is 4K, which will only do up to 5.7K resolution in the videos. I've got the Quest 1, which also will do up to 5.7K resolution. I've got the Neo 3 Asian version, which will do 7200 by 3600. And I've got the Pico Neo 2, which is basically a cousin to the Quest 1. Okay? And I've got videos that I've shot with this on here. Turn this on. Now, I'm not sure if you guys have worked with this lens at all yet, or if you really haven't had a chance because I've been hoarding it. But let me bring the ISO up. So what we should do is, let me turn this around this way. And might want to focus that in on that. So whether you're using this to record or whether you're using this just as a monitor, I'm not a big fan of histograms for video. You know, a histogram is an algebraic sum of all of the highs, lows, and mediums in the image, but it doesn't give you a good reckoning of what's going on with the video. So what's really nice is
waveform.
Waveform and vector scope. And here, notice we can even go full screen with this. And I'm gonna bring this down a little bit. I'll bring it down to 50 to try and get a little bit better look there. So this does very, very well. And I've been working with it. I finally got this to overheat yesterday, which is a problem. So, I mean, I'm really anxious to find out when you guys are getting in the R5C.
Yes.
Because I think that one...
That's the next time.
Yes. Let's see. This, of course, what I've got on here right now is an Angelbird SSD. So it's capable of doing the 8K. I've had mixed results using a Samsung Evo 870, which actually is kind of rated almost the same, but sometimes it doesn't keep up with it when you're doing a recording. So, and of course, as you know, the CF Express card that's built in for doing the internal stuff. So there's different ways for you to go ahead and work with this. I've been practicing with both. It's definitely much easier to work with the internal files from the CF Express card. The EOS VR utility is very limited. And actually, there's things I'd really like to see. There's a few things I'd like to see. When you bring in the files, right now it doesn't do stills at all. There is some other third-party software that you can use for doing the stills. It's called Stereo Photo Maker. It's made by a Japanese gentleman, and it's a free download on the internet.
You mean the VR software from the Canon, not so more to do more, right?
Doesn't do very much. First of all, you have no preview. So you have a whole list of files on the left-hand side of the screen.
Yes.
And you can't tell which one is which. There's no preview. When you click on one, it immediately tries to do a vertical parallax correction, and then you have to wait for it to see if that's the one that you wanted to process. I have found that my favorite way of dealing with the files is to bring them into Premiere with the Premiere plugin.
Premiere Pro.
Yes, Premiere Pro works wonderfully.
Yeah.
Now, the only thing is, then you can't adjust if it does basic vertical parallax correction.
Yes.
But it does not do in-depth vertical parallax correction. So if everything is shot right, then you're 90% of the time it's going to be wonderful. But if you need to do more, you're stuck. That's where I go to Mystica VR, which is from a company called SGO. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not. But it's also very expensive.
I think so. The next time maybe my customer they want to use the third-party software, I suggest the Premiere Pro.
Premiere Pro works very well, and it does it all automatically. You don't have to do anything.
Yes.
You just import them in, and of course, we're all used to working with proxies now. So you can set up your ingest to do VR180 proxies, which I can send you the proxy file that they can load in for their computer so that it will do it for them. I bring my proxies down to about 2K proxies. So that way I have plenty of space when I want to add. I like to use Red Giant Colorista for color correction and sometimes some other filters. And the minute you just start throwing filters on, as you know, it's going to bog it down. So I keep it down to a 2K proxy, which gives me enough headroom to be able to do what I need to do with it.
Yes.
Mystica is very in-depth, and really you have to take some time to learn it. The learning curve is kind of steep, and but it will allow you to adjust both vertical and horizontal parallax, and it'll actually let you slightly adjust your depth budget. So it gives you much more to work with. There is one other way to go, and that is that if you like Adobe After Effects, you can first thing you would have to do is bring your file in. One of the things about this camera is you have two files to work with. With this one, it's good, and it's also a little bit more work because you only have one file. And what you have to do is you have to cut that file in half and make a separate right and left. And then you can use the built-in VR correction plugin in After Effects, and you can unwarp the image. Then you go ahead and output those and then put them on separate timelines on Premiere, and you can do manual adjustments, up, down, left, right. So you can adjust it, but it's a lot more work. But it is a way that you can work with it if you don't want to go to something like Mystica and you do have the Creative Cloud platform for Adobe, and then you have both Premiere and After Effects. So there are different ways that you can work with the files. For instance, when I shoot with the Ninja, I have to bring in the files. I have to, because Mystica does not handle ProRes RAW. In fact, very few software do handle ProRes RAW. So the problem is, also as it's recording it, it flips the eyes. So you have to first convert to, what I do is I convert from ProRes RAW to ProRes HQ. Then I bring it into Mystica, and Mystica, I've already engineered the preset. I've created my own preset for it, and it will automatically, instead of having to put it in twice, you just have to put it in one time, and it flips the eyes into the right position. And then you can do all the adjustments. Then you output from Mystica as ProRes 422 or ProRes HQ, and then you can go edit from there. So there's different steps. The most direct path is to go from the camera to Premiere Pro, and you can edit right away. So that's the fastest way to go.